Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Monday, January 24th meeting of the Select Board. We will start with a roll call attendance.
Manschreck, 353 Pond Road.
George Bailey, 19 Chesley Drive.
Andrew Knapp, Lindsay Point Road. If everyone would please silence your phones and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I will give it a moment for Select Person Air to join us up here. I will apologize to everybody in advance that I have our on-call phone for work, so if it rings, I do have to take that call. Okay. Welcome to the board, Select Person Air. Looking to review the agenda review and approval. Everybody acceptable with the agenda is everyone acceptable with the agenda? The town administrator would like to add 2 items to the agenda. One for the tricentennial, the bill we authorized back in May, the expending of $2,000 for t-shirts, and the bill came in and it's $2,004. And then the second item was a Barrington Women's Club raffle that they would like to hold.
Without objection, those will be J and K under the consent agenda.
Objection.
Any other comment? Motion to approve the agenda review.
Move to approve the agenda.
I'll second it. Roll call vote.
Air aye.
Manschreck, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Knapp, aye. At this time, I'll open up the first of 2 public comments.
If anybody's participating virtually and like to make a public comment, you can raise your hand using the Teams feature. If you're on a phone, you might have to press *6 to unmute yourself. Speak up, wait to be recognized by the chair. If you have a public comment, state your name and your address prior to wagering that public comment. Be another opportunity for public comment towards the end of the meeting. Nothing on mine, Mr. Chair.
All right. At this time, I will close the public comment section. We have a public hearing for the issuance of a building permit on Orchard Hill Road, a Class 6 road for David Tedeschi, map 236, lot 20. So commentary, feedback from the board on this. I would also point out to everyone that one of the items that we will be further addressing is our Class 6 and private road agreement meeting.
It does seem to me that we have a road problem here. It doesn't come near meeting standards set. And I don't see any indication that we're suggesting that redo the road. It's going to be fairly complex, although I think Mr. Miller suggested that would not be, if we went to the other road, it would be easier to get meet the standard.
Went to the other road.
Yeah, he talked instead of Orchard Hill. Mark talked about I can't remember which road it is. He talks about. Excuse me.
The old Green Hill Road.
Thank you.
That would require a massive wetlands crossing.
Right.
Yeah.
Both cases, there's wetlands involved, and I didn't see a septic. I didn't see a septic approval either. But did I miss that?
One of the items that we're talking about is reviewing this board level so that people don't spend funds to go do something, or to try and do something that isn't, that we're not willing to approve.
Right.
Select person Air.
Can I put the horse before the cart? Can we get update on the work that's supposed to be done at the beginning?
Yeah, so the Class 5 section of Orchard Hill Road, we've engaged and signed a task order with CMA Engineers, the town's new engineer of record, to design the improvements to the town section of the road there. Last summer, the biggest progress that took longer than anticipated was developing a conceptual rendering for the property owner at the top of the hill. So a big part of the objective in improving the Class 5 section of that road is improving the grading. And anybody that's been up there, that knob at the very top of the hill, it creates a lot of problems there, sight distance and otherwise. And so the biggest priority there is to improve the grading farther down the hill. It's been more about drainage. There wasn't enough usable right of way to have proper drainage. So we have enough right of way. We were looking to get the property owner at the top of the hill on board because taking that knob out would leave a pretty substantial retaining wall and a little bit of a reconfigured driveway. So we were able to get a conceptual rendering put together and get that property owner on board. And so, like I said, right now, CMA, we recently signed a task order. They're going to start designing the engineering to fix that knob at the top and the drainage down the rest of the way. Hopefully, we'll be able to not have to haul much for material out or in by regrading the kind of two elevation changes that happen on that section of the road. And we have funds properly prepared in the transportation fee capital reserve to fund the anticipated construction costs for the improvement. Does that answer your question, Mr. Air?
And then what's the applicant's time frame on this?
We could ask the applicant because I believe he's here. If you could, excuse me, sir, if you could, would you mind please coming up to the, just so that everyone that is listening to the meeting can hear you and
Sit or stand?
Sit's fine, yep. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
When do you want to start this?
Last spring. Yeah, I'm looking to start as soon as possible. When I built a house there. And I bought the lot in July and I had called John Hudkins and he said to meet Mark Monroe, I believe his name, the road agent. So I met him there and we went over everything and he said, you might have to widen the road a little bit for a turnaround, for also two fire engines could possibly pass each other. And so I've been talking quite a bit about that. And he said I might have to cut down a couple of trees, but they weren't sure exactly what to do with the Class 6 road. And here I am. So we would like to go on as soon as possible. I know you mentioned the septic design. I have that designed already, but I can't apply for it yet until I have my wetland crossings done because there's a little stream up there. We're in the process of trying to get the wetlands done right now.
Well, my thing is too, with town, we need to fix that. We've been playing on it. That's just the update, but
Yeah,
it's the wrong timing.
yeah. Mark said I'd be grandfathered in to get a building permit. I know you guys stopped issuing permits for Class 6 currently.
Yeah, so when the select board put a halt on the hearings, we knew the town was aware that you had already started working on the application process. So the grandfather was just keeping with the hearing but the select board at their last meeting resumed hearings. So that part has moved on, but the policy was unchanged from when it was halted for the review process.
Okay.
Thank you.
mm-hmm. So that, I don't know if you folks have all seen it, but the planning board issued their response on it, kind of punting it to The fact that they say, yeah, we have no problem issuing a building permit in aligning with the road agent's recommendations.
Talking about building permits.
I'm sorry, who's this?
Somebody came in, was unmuted. We fixed the problem. Thank you.
So, which also kind of ties back to the conversation we're going to have later this evening. Candidly, my recommendation to you would be to wait until we've had our conversation on the Class 6 and private road agreement, and then come back before the board at that point, because if to go through this the way it's currently drafted with the road agent's recommendation, and those will still be applicable to a degree afterward, it seems like there's a whole lot of work that you're going to have to do to even get to be able to get the access or improve the access in a way that would allow you to get up there to build.
I don't understand what exactly happened. Like, I know the fire chief said it had to be 20 feet wide, the road. We measured it and we're not far off. It's only like a few feet of gravel. I got an excavator there and he looked at it and said it was livable. I kind of feel like I bought the land in July and I hired a surveyor then, and he told me the exact process. I got in touch with the building inspector, the road agent. I did everything I was told to do. And I'm sorry, the building inspector and the road agent both said, you're fine. And then I purchased it. I spent a lot of money, obviously, and I've done all this work, engineering, surveying, et cetera. Kind of at a stop.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
You may.
So the Class 6 and private road policy, which I imagine you reviewed, you obviously submitted the application, you signed the release. So the standards required in the Class 6 and private road policy right now are that the traveled way be 16 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders, and at a minimum, there be 4 inches of crushed gravel on that 16 feet of traveled surface. So with this application, is it your intention to make that section of the Class 6 road meet that standard of 16 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders?
That's what I have to do, yes. Mark said I might be able to just do a section so 2 fire trucks could pass each other. The problem with if I do the whole section is quite a few trees down, some big trees too. And I know you guys own, or the town owns the first few feet of land. But I just feel like I'm cutting trees in front of my neighbor's house. I like, that was my issue. But
the reason I asked that question is, so the decision is the select board. So in the state of New Hampshire, RSA 674-41 says the issuance of building permits on Class 6 and private roads need to be pre-authorized by the select board. So that's this process. The policy, the select board set that policy as an effort to, establish some groundwork for the process. So if you're willing or interested in meeting the standards of the policy, the 16 feet with 2-foot shoulders, and some of the details about drainage mentioned by the road agent, that would allow the select board to consider authorizing the issuance of the permit under those conditions. If instead your request is to do something different, either have a section be less than 16 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders, or try to get something different, that's a little bit different of a conversation with the select board, where they'd like to know what are you willing to do? What are you proposing? And so that's when the chair said later in the conversation, because later in the meeting, we're going to talk about the policy and how to handle those situations that aren't exactly to the policy. And so we don't really know what the select board is going to decide about handling those situations where somebody would like to do something different, but still meet the policy. So I think that's what the chair was talking about when he mentioned if you're not willing to do the 16 foot wide traveled surface and 2-foot shoulders, maybe pay attention through the rest of the meeting and see where the conversation of the select board goes.
okay, I am willing to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I spent a lot of money at this point. And I want to stop. Yeah, and it's not a huge section of. I don't.
So
Thanks for that information.
the comment from Mark Morrow is that the average width is 13 to 14 feet, any shoulders and spots. But the piece that stands out to me is he's saying the average width.
Yeah, we actually walked it and measured it, and a lot of spots actually are already 20 feet and some 18, it just varies.
Yeah, I know, though, I haven't been up there recently, but the last time I was up there, the drainage ditches were pretty deep in there, like to the point where they would kind of swallow a car up if it went off the road. And I don't know if that's changed at all.
Yeah, I don't feel that they were that deep. I've walked it quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you're up there a lot more than I have been.
Yeah, I did a lot of surveying there and yeah,
So,
we did test pits for the septic. We've done quite a bit of work.
select person there.
Well, one problem I have is we're scheduled to work there. We're not done it. So how can we allow something that we haven't finished yet? At the beginning part?
Well, that was part of our conversation here
Later
at the
on.
beginning, is that the engineering work has already started on that. And this process is moving forward to fix the front portion of the road, since that is the town portion of that road.
Right, I'm saying, host for the car. If you go in there and get all that done, the perfect standard, we don't have our beginning part done. What we know about that?
Well, that's on us. What we're talking about here is issuing the building permit based on the class 6 portion, not the class 5 portion.
Am I correct that the class 6 starts like right after the Y? Okay. And the first part is like 3 houses being built there.
There was,
That's the area we're talking about.
right.
Yeah.
That road is
Okay.
being repaired and expanded down there, and part of the agreement for the gentleman building was there used to be an old farmhouse there on the corner that was right on the road.
Yeah, yeah.
And part of that agreement was actually he tore that house down and gave the town an expanded right of way into that area to fix that bottom portion of the road.
Yeah. Okay.
But that is on the, down to the class 5 section of the road.
Right. Yeah.
Select person Air. Will you please silence your phone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that's my father.
Then if you need to, please excuse yourself to answer the call. Select person Mantrip.
No, it seems to me it meets all these other standards if we can include the improvement of the road to the standard, which we'll discuss. I think probably I would move to approve a building permit.
Yep, I don't have any problem with that if that's the case. Is everyone good with it? And
Would the chair entertain a motion for continuance towards the end of our meeting to cover this in the new business?
I'll entertain anything. It sounds like the applicant is willing to meet our standards as they exist here.
Very well, thank you. Withdraw my motion.
Um,
In that case, I move that we authorize a building permit to include the improvement of the road to meet the standards of our class 6 agreement, which I think we're pretty well agreed on, although we're going to discuss a little bit later.
And all recommendations by department head Mark Morrow.
Right. Did Chief Walker get a chance to see his comment? He usually has.
I do not have comments attached here.
I know that George was,
Right.
although
And you have to open and close public comment.
Yep.
Thank you.
perfect.
Is there anything else that anyone would like to discuss from the board on this?
The only thing I'm discussing with you, Mr. Chairman, is that we're going to waive the requirement for this applicant to have a bond.
Is that we waive it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't have an issue with,
thank you. I would like to add that to the motion to waive the requirement for a bond.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other commentary from the board? Hearing none and knowing that there's a motion at this time, I'll open public comment.
Again, if you're participating virtually and you'd like to make a public comment, you can raise your hand using the Teams feature, or if you're on a phone, you'll have to press *6 to unmute yourself. Speak up, wait to be recognized by the chair. If you do have a comment, start with your name and your address. Again, that's *6 if you're on a phone and you want to make a comment. It's different than the mute button on your phone. It's part of the conference call program. We can't unmute you from this end. Last call of public comment for the public hearing on a building permit on Orchard Hill Road. Nothing on this end, Mr. Chair.
Right, hearing none, I'll close public comment. I'm looking for a roll call vote.
Second.
Oh, I will, looking for a second on the motion that was made by Select Person Mantrek and amended by Select Person Bailey to include the waiving of the bond.
Oh, I can't second. I'll like to second Mr. Mantrex.
Seconded by Select Person Bailey. Roll call vote.
Hair abstained.
Mantrek, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations, sir.
All right.
Excuse me. Consent agenda. There are items there are the items listed as letters A through K for the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone would like to have removed from the consent agenda, or is everybody okay with the items as listed?
I move to accept the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion. Are we for approval? Roll call vote.
Hair aye.
Mantrek, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye. Appointments. We have Scott Ramsey for the Recreation Commission. This is the second time this has been before the board.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Hair aye.
Mantrek, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye. And then we have Mr. David Johnson for a Recreation Commission alternate. Second time before the board.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Hair aye.
Mantrek, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye. Staff reports, Administrator McIver.
Thank you. The second meeting in January covered the January work anniversaries at the last meeting, but you'll be glad to know that I amended my report to make sure that Aaron O'Day was listed as 2 years, not 2 year. I know, probably didn't sleep for the last 3 weeks, worried about that.
It was terrible, I tell you.
That's been addressed. So I also wanted to cover a little bit of town meeting information. So as you know, Barrington as an SB2 community has 2 separate sessions. First, a deliberative session followed by a ballot session, which is also known as town meeting. So the town's deliberative session is February 5th, which will be on Saturday, February 5th at 9:00 a.m. at the Barrington Middle School in the auditorium. So later in the meeting, we'll talk about the select board's duties, roles, and responsibilities. But I wanted to point out that at barrington.nh.gov/2022 warrant, you can see all 34 warrant articles to be considered on this year's ballot. Additionally, the budget binder, all 400 some odd pages, is available at barrington.nh.gov/2022 budget. I also linked in my report the offices open for election, the 2022 open offices. So we are accepting folks to sign up for those open positions currently through Friday of this week. On Friday, if you sign up on Friday, the town clerk's office is only open from 3 to 5. So we will know by the end of the week that those folks that are signing up for open elected positions. I also included in your printed packet the zoning amendment ballot with explanations. So I would encourage anybody that's looking for information about the zoning amendments to review this document because of the explanations that are included. So the warrant and the language on each article in the warrant is limited by statute and legal language to make sure that we're presenting the articles in a proper way. Unfortunately, that leaves a lot to be desired sometimes specifically with zoning amendments, with the reader understanding what the plain text of the amendments mean. And so we're unfortunately not able to provide explanations on the ballot, but we do and actually are required by law to have explanations on a document like this, which will be available at deliberative session. It's on the town's website. It's at the town hall. You all have a copy, which provides brief explanations for each zoning amendment to help guide voters to understand what they'll be voting on. So if anybody does have questions, please use this document to answer them if you can. Point them in the direction of other resources or send them to the town hall. We're happy to answer. Your planning board liaison.
Right, as the planning board liaison, I'll gladly answer any questions somebody has.
So you all have a copy of that. Deliberative session, like I said, is on Saturday, February 5th, 9 a.m. And the town meeting, the ballot session, is on Tuesday, March 8th. And voting will be from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Municipal Office Administrator Cottle, really struggling tonight. Today,
For your
Jenna.
review and signature, I have the raffle permit that was just approved in the consent agenda. I actually have a hard copy today, if you don't mind signing it before you take off tonight. And then also, Chairperson Knapp, you will get the permit in your email.
Yep. I'll sign it. And that's all? All righty.
I love that.
So old business, the Class 6 and private road agreement. And you wanna start, Connor?
So I'll start. Okay, so I trust you've all read through my report, and I hope you were able to follow the details about where the policy is now, and what we talked about at the planning board meeting as a proposed alternative to make the policy more productive for the stated purpose. So, as you know, at the last select board meeting, the select board, in reviewing the policy, identified, hey, look, if we just follow this policy specifically, then we don't necessarily need to make any improvements as it exists now. That's what the board felt. But if we stuck to the policy, that would improve circumstances more than they have been in recent months or years. And so what that prompted is a detailed review of the policy as it's written. And we identified some areas that, if it's the select board's intention, that we can make improvements and formalize the process a little bit better. And additionally, as I indicated I would, we had a rather spirited conversation with the planning board at the end of their meeting, which was already a long meeting. And so a lot of credit goes to planning board members for being willing to humor me for the conversation. But having a conversation with the planning board about finding a balance with the select board's intention to improve access, but also maintain private property rights. And so the planning board discussed in detail the different components of the policy and actually presented what I think is a pretty creative option if the select board was interested in making any changes to the policy. So following through in what's in my report, and in the order that it's in the policy. So section 4B of the policy currently indicates that the standard of the policy is the subdivision regulations. That's the standard of the policy. It indicates that the select board can waive that standard down to a minimum of 16 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders and at least 4 inches of crushed gravel on the surface. So the select board previously, in issuing waivers to the standard, had been going below the 16 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders. And the planning board didn't think that was in the town's best interest with the authorization of issuing building permits on Class 6 and private roads, but recognized that some situations it would be better to use an opportunity to make some improvement than no improvement at all. And so
I was going to say, in a lot of what was used kind of as the litmus test were Berry River and Longshore Road. We're talked about a lot in that because those are roads that were mostly deplorable at one point and now have come a long way. Still could use a lot more, but have improved.
And the big part about that is, you know, unfortunately, a lot of the improvements that have been made have gone by the wayside because of a lack of proper maintenance or, you know, not necessarily making lasting improvements. But so that's where the planning board's focus kind of was. So the first recommendation is to simply set the 16 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders, surfaced with 4 inches of crushed gravel as the standard. Currently it's listed as the minimum standard, but just indicate that's the standard because in reviewing records in recent history, there weren't a lot of instances where more than that was required.
Well, and never once do I know of a situation where the road has been brought up to subdivision standards, mainly because it becomes far too challenging to meet at that point.
I think it's 22 feet wide with 3-foot shoulders and a 30-foot right of way. But anyways, the select board could still reserve the right to require more stringent standards. That would still be within the purview of the select board, and that could be clearly indicated in the policy. Second would be a second option that wouldn't require separate action by the select board, but an option at the property owner's discretion to say in lieu of increasing the standard, increasing the road to 16 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders, they could invest 10% of their construction cost of whatever construction they're doing that triggers the need for the building permit on the road, with a strong request that they work with the local road association to invest those funds. And so, you know, for instance, would be a road that that maybe the right of way isn't wide enough to accommodate 16 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders. And that is an impediment to the property owner because they either can't afford or are unable to secure the right of way in order to widen the road. But if they're spending $250,000 building a house, then they could instead put $25,000 worth of work into the road, making improvements. And that would be, like I said, in our hope would be that they'd work closely with an established road association. But at the very least, the road agent and fire chief would be able to review what their plan of improvements are and make sure that that plan of improvement is maximized. Just like it's already listed, which this is a little C in my report. And either of those options, the town would reserve the option listed currently to require culverts, turnarounds, and or pavement. So, you know, we wouldn't eliminate the town's involvement in recommending improvements for purposes of drainage and turnarounds and things like that. So those would be the two primary options, and it would be cut and dry. And the expectation is that the applicant would come in, tell us what they intend to do, how they intend to do it, and be clear. And that's already been able to be reviewed by the road agent, other department heads, and otherwise. And then leaving the door open in what I would say by design should be just leaving the door cracked, but a waiver process for extenuating circumstances. John Huckins mentioned an example where somebody was raising their house to come up out of the water. It's in a wet area, and that.
Well, he's talking about taking it from piers and putting a foundation under it.
Thank you.
Well, he wasn't raising it to get it out of the water. He's taking it off piers and putting a full basement in.
I was gonna say, this would be curious.
Thank you. A subtle but important difference, no question. But anyways, as the policy is written, that adds volume and requires this process. But there is question at the planning board on whether or not that meets the intent of triggering the requirements. And you know, if you look at the section 1 and section 2 at the beginning of the policy, that's where you see sheds and garages don't require this process, but the intent is to capture that additional or expanded living space like ADUs or new construction, but where it says additions that add to the volume of the existing building. The existing Z building, whatever a Z building is. So anyways, it's a building. Yeah.
Okay. So
Germans wrote this.
There was a lot of discussion around how we got there and the impact, even so much around the fact that ADUs will, albeit not add a lot of traffic, do have the ability to add traffic to the road. So And on some of these roads that are older, narrow roads, excuse me, you couldn't necessarily get the expanded right away to get into the larger track, but it would be, in situations, it can be beneficial for the homeowner to have that option to do it, or to be afforded that option to do it. And this was where the suggestion around the 10% invested into the road piece came in after a lot of banter back and forth. I think we had, what, an hour and a half into that, and
I don't know if it was quite an hour and a half, but it felt like that because we were like, it was like 9:30 to 10:30. So,
Right.
you know, that hour feels like an hour and a half sometimes.
spent a week there one afternoon.
Yeah.
So it was good conversation in that it gave an option, and it gave a way to align with what has always been the select board's intent, is that we continue to improve and bring up the standard of these class 6 roads. They might not meet the perfectly desired standard, but over the course of time, if people are making significant improvements or taking seasonal camps on these, because that's what a lot of these are on these roads, and turning them into year-round residents, they're changing the use and building it out in a more functional purpose. So it creates an avenue to accomplish what we want of improving the road, the access, the needs of our police, our fire department, without having to overstrap them to do something that they can't do, or stripping them of their rights to potentially develop their parcel of land if it is a buildable and developable parcel. Which the secondary part of that was altering this so that they had the ability to come before us and talk about all these road improvements beforehand. That way somebody didn't go down the road of getting a septic design in place, getting everything, all the engineering work, as our applicant had alluded to before, where you've got a wetlands crossing and all kinds of other things that are in process. So you don't spend all this money only to have it be denied by the board if they're not willing to find a way to meet these requirements for us.
And so that's Roman numeral 4, little Roman numeral 4, on page 5. And the policy, as it's written right now, doesn't require all of those items to be in the packet. But over the years, the select board made it clear that, you know, hey, they're not going to build there if they can't get a septic. So why are we even looking at this if they don't have septic? But like Andy mentioned, an opportunity to review it at the front end. So if the select board, which it's the select board's authority to do so, if the select board looks at an application and says, we don't believe it's in the town's best interest that something is built on that lot, then the property owner knows that at the front end. And they're not spending all this money. You know, granted, they would have to be the property owner. So if they're, you know, buying property to do so, you know, maybe they'd have to convince the current property owner to go through the process for them. But going back to Roman numeral 3, a couple of items under section 4A, it talks about having a permit to work on class 6 roads. So we're formalizing that process internally right now in the highway department. They have some examples of permits from other communities. So we'll have a more formal process. And as far as bonding, you know, we would, as part of the recommendation process, we would look to the road agent and maybe in consultation with the town's engineer to determine if bonding is recommended or not based on the scope of the work to be done.
I like that.
And then under section 7, section 7 of the current policy requires a duly recorded instrument regarding road maintenance. Now, as you know, and it's clear in the policy, we can't require anybody as a condition of this policy or our authority under RSA 674-41 to require somebody to join a road association. But what is required and what we can require in this policy is a duly recorded instrument regarding road maintenance. Now, what that means is maybe there isn't a formal road association, and when somebody builds, as a condition of their process, we can require them to work with their neighbors and get something recorded at the registry pertinent to road maintenance. Because as we discussed, and the planning board discussed at length also, is making improvements to road is only half the battle and maybe less than half the battle. A bigger problem is improper maintenance, and especially improper winter maintenance. And so is this going to be the silver bullet that solves winter maintenance problems? No. But what it will do over time is when we have these recorded instruments and folks call the town and complain about the condition of the road maintenance on a Class 6 or private road, which we don't have control over, if somebody on that road's been through this process, we can say, hey, take a look at the registry, because there's an agreement in place that indicates what the road maintenance responsibilities are. Now, if there already is a decent road association there, well, they can just piggyback on that. And the town can make available as part of this application, examples of simple and complex road maintenance agreements, because with the planning board as part of a subdivision, and sometimes as part of site review, the planning board requires road maintenance agreements. And we've seen them everywhere from a few sentences to very complex in a homeowners association document. So they wouldn't necessarily have to start from scratch. And then, like Andy had mentioned, the not requiring those items. So those are the recommendations.
Select person Mantrick.
Just out of curiosity, how many of the Class 6 roads have road associations that we know of?
Here's the problem with road associations. A road association, to have legal standing in the state, really has to be established before anybody lives there. Now, there's a lot of road associations that are even pretty formal that were established afterwards, and their authority to do things like place liens on properties and things like that are questionable, because you have the property rights that existed with that property when you bought it, and somebody else can't decide to encumber those property rights like your neighbors on the road. And so every Class 6 road has some level of an agreement because they get plowed. Somebody plows them, even if it's just one neighbor and somebody drops off donuts every once in a while. Or even if it's not a formal, but somebody walks by every spring and says, hey, give me your $150 for my buddy that plowed you all winter. But the town keeps no record of road associations on Class 6 or private roads. That was kind of a non-answer, I know.
Yes.
Okay. Just make sure that was in the record, that I didn't answer your question.
Select person Bailey.
Thank you. Piggyback on what Damon had to say, is there any way that our zoning policy that comes from the planning board has that in there, or was that something that they could put in there when the individual comes before them to put in a plot of roads for their subdivision or what have you? Because that's something
It's already in there.
it's already in the subdivision.
So the subdivision regulations require the contemplation of road maintenance. And so that's why we have good examples.
I think I agree with you in that, but I'm also talking about the road association.
You can't mandate somebody as part of a road association.
That answers my question. Okay, thank you.
Well, I actually don't know about that. I think under the authority of the subdivision regulations, we require homeowners association documents and to be reviewed. I'd have to ask John or the town's attorney to know for sure if there's a limit to that authority, or if they just do it because it's a good idea.
I think that'd be a good idea for the board, Mr. Chair.
So
Well, the planning board's going through the regulations anyway. So
I guess
No,
what-
I was
let me
talking
ask-
for us, yeah.
why? Because I'm kind of a firm believer in this standpoint that don't make it complicated. Like, allow the folks who live there to run it the way that is appropriate for them, and continue to let the process improve and function in an effective manner through the use of our department heads with this permitting process.
Okay, what I'm ultimately getting to the fact is that we just reviewed Dana's question about having a road association, and as Connor has said, that we have to, we can't change somebody's property after they buy it. So if during the process of this development, the planning board made it a requirement that they have a road association, and then now when they turn around and buy that piece of property, it's already there before they buy the property. So it's not, like you said earlier, impeding on their right to have their property.
I
You're
guess
talking
I'm-
during subdivision.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And
saying.
John has hand up.
Before they
Mike
sell
at
the
the end.
first lot, they have it all written out and be covered that way. Maybe I'm on a different,
I'm struggling to see the relevance to this on most lots on class 6 and private roads, because in most cases, when I look at a class 6 or a private road, they're either buying an already subdivided parcel of land, so they're not subdividing any further, although they could at a later point in time, but that requires meeting the subdivision regulations at that point in
But
time.
RSA 674-41 speaks to the right to build on a lot. And a lot created and approved by the planning board does not require select board involvement.
Right.
So that's a separate authority to build on a lot created by a subdivision. So they would need to come here. But I think, Andy, what George is saying is, hey, if through subdivision regulations, we have the authority to require road maintenance agreements, then we should do that. And like I said, John's got his hand up. He probably knows
Right.
what's in there specifically.
that's.
Right,
But separate from this
road maintenance is different than requiring a road association. They're not one and the same. They are
Correct.
very different documents. And I speak from experience living on a class 6 and private road.
But to your point, though, it's still immaterial to the review of the class 6 and private road policy.
Right. John, I see you have as Connor pointed out, you have your hand up. Would you like to comment on this? I know you were part of our spirited conversation as well.
Yeah, the bit with the having to join the association, whether you can force them or not, all comes down to timing. So if it's done before they purchase the lot, then that is something that is put on them that they agreed to at the time of purchase. You can't make the rule after they purchase it. So anybody that owns a lot, they can make that an agreement before they sell it. So therefore that is binding, and it's binding going forward. The other thing I'd like to make a comment to, why I got the mic, is that intermittent upgrade on the roads when they go through. It's not just they're not building the road to the whole standards. They're making the road better for all the people that are already out there and making it safer for all the people that are already out there, which sometimes could be quite a bit of improvement, especially when it's done 10 or 12 times in a row on the same road. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, John.
So the select board doesn't have to make a decision tonight, but that's the recommendation of the planning board. If you'd like, what I'd recommend for a first next step, if you like what's proposed, I can draft it up into a red line version of the current policy. Or if you'd like to make changes, you can let me know about that, or you can also do nothing and keep the policy as it's written currently.
The only thing I was looking for clarification on under section 7, where we're talking about a duly recorded instrument, you're talking about recording with the registry and recording with the town?
We're recording with the registry and indicating, providing a copy of that with the application of the certificate of occupancy.
Mm-hmm. I would like to see it all put into a final document, redlined up. And then we can make a decision, but I'm happy with the changes. I appreciate the planning board's insight because I think it created some flexibility. One of the takeaways that I've had out of this is we have a policy that we never follow. So let's make it so that it's more reasonable to follow. Keeping in mind the fact that we as a board cannot tie the hands of any future select board. So the next board could come in here and look at this and say, I don't like it, we're not doing this. So when I look at it is how do we make it to where this is as clean and easy for any board to come in here and say, hey, this makes sense and it's reasonable. Select person Mantrick?
Should this be a warrant article that we get people to vote on?
Well, it's a policy, it's a select board policy.
I appreciate that, but I'm expanding it a little bit.
I wouldn't be in support of that. And the reason I wouldn't be in support of it is because class 6 and private roads theoretically only impact a very small portion of the town.
True.
So having the majority of the town vote on something that impacts one little piece of the town regarding our road policy for that, I don't think is a really reasonable direction, because you lock it in, you'll end up locking it in so tight because whatever you put before as a warrant is going to become very binding. And may end up being challenged because it will further restrict property rights. And I'll give you a perfect example of that, not quite the same, but very similar, is anybody who follows anything that's happening with regard to property rights. Conway, New Hampshire, voted as a warrant to exterminate the rights of people to have vacation rentals. And there's a bill before the Senate right now, SB 49, that will reinstate their rights, and it allows the town to regulate it, but it does not, but it says they can regulate it, they cannot prohibit you from doing it. So when you go down a road like this, you will get a much heavier hand from the state level as opposed to keeping local control, which the intent of this is that we have local control of this here. So we as a board get to help drive a productive and functional direction within our town. And that's what the citizens elect us to do in this process.
My contention the other day,
Excuse me.
that it does lock us in, but there is the waivers and the possibilities here. And we also have approval town. I understand your argument too.
I think the amendments that are being proposed give us a lot more flexibility than the policy we've just repeatedly waived, or at least for the 6 years I've been sitting on this board have pretty much waived.
Been waived for a lot longer than that.
Oh, I know they were waived long before I got here, and carried on well after that.
But our assumption is that the reason we meet is to, and we had a policy that we haven't followed in the past. I think town does not agree. That isn't what we're supposed to do. That wasn't what we were elected for. But if we do have a policy that the town agrees on, then we can carry that forward. I hear your argument too.
I hear both of you.
Like I said, I appreciate your position. I feel like punting it back to the voters is not in with the spirit or the intent of the policy as it was put in place through RSA 649, 674-41, that the selectmen have the discretion and authority to do that. And I believe the state did that because we're supposed to be the pulse of the town and have some oversight and say as to what's happening there.
It sure would be good to see the red line.
Yep.
So I can, as drafted here, kind of as recommended by the planning board. And so one thing of interest is that for the next meeting, as it stands right now, that first meeting in February, we have 3 applications for authorizing building permits issued on class 6 private roads. So, I think similar to how the select board handled the hearing for the issuance of building permit on Orchard Hill Road, I think the select board, I think we can ask the applicants, staff can ask the applicants up front that, do you understand the standards in the policy as it's currently written, and do you intend to meet that policy? And if not, if they don't intend to meet that policy, is the select board interested in reviewing their application prior to finalizing these types of changes? Or if they don't intend to meet the policy, would you prefer that we continue their application until, if you're giving other options for them to consider, like the 10%, Would you like to wait until that's finalized to review an application if somebody isn't willing to meet the policy? Does that question make sense?
Yep. If they're not willing to meet the policy, I would make the recommendation that they request a continuance on it.
Well, we can just schedule it for
Or
the next meeting.
schedule
Yeah.
it, yeah, until after we have reviewed and finalized the
I
red
think
line
that's the way to
document.
go.
Mr. Manshek is,
No, I agree.
okay. So we'll do that with the three. We'll do the, have a conversation with them, see if they're gonna meet the policy, and if not, you will ask them to, or ask them, let them know that their hearing will be scheduled at
For
the
the
second meeting in
second
February at
meeting.
the earliest. So I'll try to get that red line version out maybe by the end of this week, so that you all have plenty of time to review it ahead of the next meeting. Make sure we want to make any other changes.
Thank you again for good civil discourse and conversation during the meeting, because that doesn't always happen. Select Person Era, you rejoining us? Right. Too many pieces of paper going in front of me here. So,
I said, yeah, you and me both.
we are up to the town report.
Deliberative session preparation. It's my fault because I collated the stuff in your packets backwards. So new business B is before new business A. in your packet. Do whatever you want. So new business A is 2022 deliberative session preparation. So just a little bit of follow up under what was in my kind of staff report. So what you have in front of you is information document for deliberative session. So this is similar to what we prepared last year. This indicates that, yes, we will be having a deliberative session in person. Yes, masks are strongly encouraged. We have good audio visual. We will have a live stream available, but virtual participation will not be possible because there's no way to verify that folks speaking are registered voters. And there's a few frequently asked questions in there. So happy to answer any questions about that. It's available on the town's website, put out there. People have questions about the deliberative session. Use that to answer their questions. And then the second document is the proposed deliberative session schedule. So along with this, you have slides that each of you will be presenting. I assigned warrant article presentations in the order of how the select board usually sits. So we'll just go down the line. If you'll remember, so the moderator will open the deliberative session. He'll introduce officials. Andy will do select board opening remarks, starting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And then we'll get into warrant articles. The moderator has been reading each article before presentation and discussion. So we'll talk about election of officers, all of the zoning amendments. I will cover the operating budget, and then 16 through 32 will be presented by various select board members. So if you have questions or concerns about the slide deck that I printed out for each of you, let me know. We've got plenty of time to get that ironed out. But that's how it stands right now. And the only item of additional interest is that I have Andy being the one to plan to introduce the amendment to the petitioned all veterans tax credit. So that will need to be, we'll make a motion to amend it, be seconded, and the moderator will hear discussion on that.
So I think I only missed like 2 of Chief Walker's topics. Couldn't I get those as well, since I have all the others here?
Well, and that is a footnote. So this is an introduction by select board members, but for various articles, other members of staff or interested parties may speak to the topic. So the last thing I wanted to mention is that we will have a select board meeting scheduled immediately following the deliberative session. The purpose of that select board meeting is very narrowly only to update the recommendations on any articles that have changed. So you can't change your recommendation if the article didn't change, but if the article changed, you may update your recommendation, and we'll do that after the meeting. Any questions, concerns about deliberative session?
Nope.
hoping for a real quick one, but with all the zoning, and the, after I prepared this schedule, I met with the moderator, unrelated topic, but he's gonna ask the voters at deliberative session to move the zoning amendments to the end of the meeting, because you can't amend zoning articles. And a lot of times, if there ends up being discussion, there ends up being a lot of discussion and it's just back and forth. And so he's gonna ask the session to move those to the end to get everything that you can change out of the way first.
What's the reasoning behind that?
Just,
Because when,
yeah, sorry.
I understand what you're saying.
To
I really,
expedite.
I know that, but when he reads the motion as when Stan used to say, we are coming to these zoning motions, the zoning motions are on the warrant article and they're not open for discussion, and he just reads right through each one and gets to the end and he's all done.
I get
Because the planning board has already had that meeting for the zoning changes, and if people didn't attend it,
So we can make a motion, we can make a recommendation to Ron to not exacerbate and prolong the meeting with discussion on something that cannot be amended there because it was already moved and motioned at the planning board. And it has gone through 2 public hearings at that point.
well, that's exactly what I'm saying here. Why can't that be done?
I can pass that message along. I get the sense that Ron is open to allowing people to discuss the zoning articles, even at the very least, to be able to have their questions answered and have further discussion about it, if in case they didn't make it to the public hearings.
Thank you.
I would, to some extent, I agree, but I also completely agree with George's point where there is no actual changing or amending everything, and they had the opportunity, not at 1, but at 2 different sessions. Actually, I believe it partially was at 3 because we had the petitioned warrant article. So it got extended out even further, where if somebody had an issue, they could have raised it at that time.
Mr. Mantrick had his hand up.
Select Person Mantrick?
I was just going to say that one of the concerns I think that Ron may have is that people tend to come to the deliberative session and they leave as soon as they can. So arguably, the people who want to amend and change warrant articles would be more likely to be there at the beginning of the meeting and less likely to be at the end. On the other hand, you could argue that we'll go through the ones you can't amend, keep people there till the end of the session.
So this is your first deliberative session?
No.
I've
been to
right,
all of
but
the last several years.
Yeah, they tend to, I mean, I have, in the 6 years I've been there, they tend to drag out. And I think the earliest one that we've gotten out of was like 11 or 11:30 or 12 o'clock.
I wasn't here for that one.
I know, but it was, it's
we
the
did.
only
Yeah,
opportunity.
we've had.
Well,
I've only seen one like that. The conversation can get long in the tooth and spirited.
Regardless, it's the moderator's meeting. And yeah, so
I would respectfully request that the moderator note the fact that discussion was to have happened at the appropriate planning board meeting where it was up for discussion.
so that's the schedule.
well, that, to go along with that would be the same thing as us discussing the school board warrant articles coming out there before us. It's already been, it's going to be or has been discussed by the time we have ours. That's just,
They're the
no,
week after us.
I'm just throwing gas on the fire.
It would be a nice idea for the community, in my opinion, if the deliberative sessions were on the same day. So that civically minded residents that come out don't have to spend 2 Saturdays out. They could come start their day at the school deliberative session and then attend the town deliberative session. And this board actually voted
I was gonna say,
We did.
to have that happen.
I would like to point out, we voted for it, we made that recommendation to the school board and they declined to take that option.
The school board did not want to have a deliberative session on the same day.
That's interesting.
I
Thank you,
think-
Mr.
I
Chairman,
think they
for putting
decided
that
not to.
forward, even though I'm not, nothing, just thanks for bringing it forward.
Some
I'm sorry.
I thought they brought it up and I thought they did not bring it up to the full board.
I'm not aware of a public meeting that they had the discussion.
But it was sent back to us that they were declining to do that.
Yes.
That'd be a good question for the deliberative session,
And the candidates forum.
if they come.
Our, so I think we've thoroughly exhausted our new business on town reports and deliberative sessions at this point.
No, 10B, there's still room for discussion on.
Yes.
So I have drafted the select board's report to be included in the town report. So I think it was actually in a different notebook, but I keep a running list of everything that the town accomplishes in a year. And the list in the past year was almost twice as long as the list in the year prior. And so distilling that down to what is, 2.5 pages, if it was longer than that, Tiffany and I would have words, because she's going to make all this fit in the town report. But distilling that down, I had to cut out a lot of really productive and really positive things that the town and the select board accomplished. And so I think the overarching message should really be that we've gotten a lot done, especially given the circumstances with, still dealing with the reverberations of the pandemic and whatnot. But anyways, this is what I've proposed as the report to be included, and I'm happy to make any amendments that you all see fit since it is your report.
Mike?
I did too. I really enjoyed the part where we talked about the lands committee, the property returned back into the sold it and were able to collect the tax on it. I really think that's very important that townspeople will pay attention to it. Show just how volunteers and this board work together to turn around and keep the town's best interests.
The only piece that stood out to me that I was a little, that I haven't really seen in prior years, and it doesn't mean that it's bad, but there was a whole section where we talked about the positions that were built, and we name dropped all of those positions. It was not something I've historically seen. We've usually left employees' names out in that regard, but recognized them in their departments.
Happy to do that.
I don't know if there was any feedback from others on it.
I think it's odd, but, but they're also listed in the beginning of the handbook, town report. So is this redundant? I don't know. I would vote either way on this, whether to leave them or to take them out. I would go either way, depending how the board was felt.
I guess the only question, or the question I have is, how do the employees feel about it? Because I know there are instances where there are employees who do not want their
it's tough to
name
work in the
published
public
in that
sector and not want to have anything public. It's all public information, right?
Right.
So every employee's name is at least twice throughout the town report, once in the listing of town officials and once in the listing of how much they make.
Yep.
And so, no, the only intention was to highlight the good people we brought aboard this year, not the least of which was Indy, the new police canine. Which will likely be featured prominently in the police department's annual report as well.
part two?
Part two.
So yeah, I'm happy to take that out if that's the board's desire.
Mr. Chairman,
Like I said, I'm okay with it. I just wanted to raise it as a question.
I have a question I'd like to ask you or whoever you designate. We have that list of all our town employees and what each individual makes. Is there any way we could list the town employees and say they make this total amount, or does the law require us to list their name individually with what their salaries are?
It just lists what they make
Right.
at the end of the year. It's what we paid them in a year.
And
But-
it doesn't
but the-
factor their benefit cost into
No, it's
what
in-
they make separated out. is,
All piece of information.
But so it has to
Right.
have their name with a dollar value. It can't have these employees here get this much money here.
It isn't required to be in the town report. There's no requirement to list in.
That's what I'm asking, yeah.
What anybody makes. The select board has historically, or the town has historically chosen to include that information in the town report for transparency. But there's certainly no requirement.
That's the key word, okay.
and
Thank
if
you.
anybody wanted it, it's public information and they can request it anyway.
But I just, say the hell, just you do it one way or the other, okay.
I'm good with it, as is. I mean, especially considering, we call out I guess more above and beyond the employees, it was the fact that we called out specific residents tied to our engineering firm and other
Oh, yeah.
associated projects like Mr. Bouchard and what was the gentleman who did all the,
Norm Boucher.
Norm Boucher, yeah, did all the communications work. And I know we called them out, but just usually if we're gonna put somebody into a document that's gonna be around for 350 years, I like to make sure that they're okay with the fact that they're recognized that way beforehand. Is everybody all right with the documents as is? Like I said, I'm fine with it. It was just one of those things that caught me as we haven't historically done this and I wanted to make sure we talked about it.
Awesome.
Okay?
Put a pin in it.
Good. Select board reports.
I got a couple of things. Town lands, the talk about different avenues, have nothing formal yet. Both the Gary and stuff and a couple, some of the feedback came in, ideas, so I forwarded it to the chair and stuff.
Yep.
And talked to Connor about it. I mixed up on the day, since I missed the last conservation, but you saw they voted on upcoming thing on Green Hill. And then if we go non-public tonight, I have a personal reputation I'd like to add here.
We do have a non-public this evening.
So I don't know.
Okay.
That's it.
Select person Mantrick.
Didn't have a transfer station meeting and the ABC, which we know that their work is. School board met twice for budget hearings. Once was on the 4th. They didn't have the contract completed with the teachers, so there was a supplemental meeting on the 18th. They eventually approved or submitting a budget of $27+ million. And then the teacher's contract is going to add up to $395,242 plus or minus. That will depend a lot on who's there. Then they have the school board meeting, had a mid-year report. I think it's kind of interesting and is important. They do have staffing problems. They've had almost a 40% teacher attrition or 40% attrition rate. Wow. Includes teachers and others.
When you say attrition, they have left?
That's correct. And most of them had cited low salaries.
That left.
That left. They were well below the median number. This new contract should bring them up pretty close to the regional median. So I think the total budget increase is going to be something like 5 or almost 6%. You want to keep good people, you have to pay people. I mean, that's our philosophy too, as far as the board is concerned, I think, that we pay the people what they're worth.
We just don't spend anywhere near $27 million to accomplish it.
No, we don't, but we don't have the relatively high priced employees that they do, as many at least. And then a concern of mine, and just a question that I'd like to put before the board, sent something around earlier, but the other concern I had is I wonder if it would be useful if we would try to meet at at the board, with the board, to meet with our legislators. I have a feeling that if we asked them, they would be willing to come. We are in fact elected officials, as are they. I think we represent the town. I think we do have an important concern about what goes on in Concord. So I would suggest that we actually invite our legislators. I would suggest individually, or I mean, one at a time, to have a discussion, hopefully with the rest of the community.
That's something we've tried for years, and
Well-
I'm just talking to you. It has nothing, and
Well, we've had them come in, and in some cases, we have provided specific requests or questions. And if our requests do not align with their vision, we have basically just been ignored.
Right.
And I can speak to a couple very specific instances on that.
I can't do.
Or we've been gaslit in the back end of it with requests that have come through where they said, I didn't request that. This is what we proposed. And instead just been gaslighting this entire board with those sort of documents, shall I say.
Well, that's why I would suggest it be an open public session so that anyone who's following us can hear them and see them say those sort of things.
The great part about it is they have all been recorded. This is the nice part about the great work that the technology committee and Connor and municipal office administrator Cottle did, because when we put it together and they linked it all up so you could click on very specific portions of the agenda, it's very easy to go back and see when someone says, I didn't say that, hold on, let me represent to you your live testimony on this.
And we have had over since during the time that I've been here, a few of our representatives have asked to come to the meeting. And so I agree with Mr. Mantrack's assertion that I think if we invited them, they would come, and it could be something that we could schedule, maybe on whatever schedule the select board wanted, but we could arrange at the beginning of the meeting. So we started the meeting that way and had the conversation. I'm trying to think, since I've been here, Senator Waters has attended a select board meeting.
Ted Gatsis.
Yeah, our executive counselor, right?
Yeah.
And
State rep.
yes.
So we have had.
But I think an organized effort, if that was the select board's intention, I'd certainly be happy to help coordinate that and get it scheduled on schedules that work for them.
We haven't in the year or the over a year that I've been.
Right, it's been a while.
Board, so.
I fully support it. I just will not be the one sitting here to administer it at that point.
Would the select board like to look at like a few meetings in a row over the summer or something?
But I would gladly be here to give you grief about it.
Yeah, exactly. I would think we'd want to do it earlier.
Okay.
The
Legislative session.
Session is in session.
Mhm.
We're going to have any impact or have any knowledge of any of these things. We'll probably want to do it sooner rather than later.
Okay. Are there topics with a request to attend a select board meeting and talk any specific topics you'd like to have them asked to be prepared to speak to?
There are a few I could. Some of them are from the NHMA. Have bring up some good ones that I think are important for us to know about how the legislature affects town specifically.
Absolutely. There's some doozies this year. So I guess if there's board members, I can work to set something up for meetings upcoming. But if there's topics that specific board members would like to discuss, I'd be happy to give them the heads up just so they can be prepared for the conversation.
Select person there, you've had your hand up.
Quick call. Well, they've been in touch with Connor too in the past. And Chris Pappas does work, Kevin Sanu and stuff, and then Connor's passed it on to us. Information stuff, so they're not avoiding us. That's things I can bring up. Like,
I mean, I think the challenge has been this past year, we have been full blown in the midst of a pandemic for a year plus, where I think a good portion of your first year, we were all remote.
Right.
And that has definitely had its growing pains that's gone along.
I'll start putting some word out.
Select Person Bailey?
Thank you very much. I would like to have them come by more often, as Mr. Mantrin has suggested, because, you know, you can ask me, is there anything I can do for you here? And then you turn around and say, well, here's my email address. Let me know what you want. That's once in 2 years. I don't think that's the way. I think even if they would only come by once a year, but you know, I agree. We need to have something. This we can say, this is what the town of Barrington needs or would like to have, and can you help us do it? If the answer is no, it's no. Or let me look into it and I'll get back to you. That's what I would expect from somebody that goes to Concord.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
That's my report. Thank you.
Select Person Bailey?
Oh, my turn. There was no ZBA meeting. There was a lack of quorum. And then, let's see, I went to the library, had a very good meeting. We have some upcoming events for the library on the January 25th. Yeah, it's tomorrow, I believe. Yes, it's Kids Spaghetti Challenge. I don't know how that's going to work. There's a trustees meeting also going on tomorrow. There's a Friends meeting, Friends of the Library meeting on the 26th. And there's a foundation on February 1st. And we have on the 7th, there's a season of day Spice Club. There's a Scandinavian Woven Hearts. We'll meet on the 8th. That's all I have. Nothing is there for else. That's all I have, sir.
The planning board reviewed and approved a couple of applications and then spent the balance of the meeting discussing the item around the Class 6 and private road agreement, and that is really the balance of what's taking place there. There wasn't a whole lot exciting to report out on, unless you want to get into the nitty gritty of a couple of planning board application approvals that have been ongoing. The technology committee didn't meet, so nothing new to update on that end.
Yeah, we did. We had our kickoff meeting with the National Collective for Digital Equity.
Yes,
To become broadband ready.
You're right.
That one of the items on the consent agenda was pursuant to that topic.
I was thinking we did that before this meeting,
know,
but
it's
I
been
guess
3 weeks.
that's why I was thinking it was before, since we're usually on a 2-week cycle.
And it'll be 3
So-
weeks to the next one.
So I guess we did have a technology committee meeting. I just thought I had talked about it at the prior meeting, but I guess there was a far enough space that we didn't.
Almost 2 weeks ago.
So I stand corrected.
I was just always here to keep you honest, Andy.
Hey, you know what? I
It's been before.
appreciate that. That's what I need, apparently. I will open the final public, Select Person Mantrick.
It's important to note that while we will not meet on that day, in February, it will be Tuesday. If you put the date down, it will be 2/2/2/22, a Tuesday. I knew you'd be thrilled. It'll be the day after Monday, but it'll be spelled differently.
I'll make a wish.
Okay.
Trying to keep you up to date.
In my world, everything has a 0 in front of it, so it's 0-2.
Okay, you can do that too. Do that too.
All right, final public comment.
So again, if anybody's participating virtually, you can raise your hand. Looks like Joyce Capiello has raised her hand.
Am I unmuted now? Hi, this is Joyce Capiello, 23 Lois Lane. Just an update, especially for Select Board Bailey. The public library meeting tomorrow evening with the architect has been canceled because I guess there was a septic backup in the building. So the library and the rec department are not open for a couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's other folks participating virtually that would like to wager public comment, you can raise your hand. If you're participating on a phone, you might need to press *6 to unmute yourself. Speak up and let the chair know you'd like to wager a comment. Start with your name and your address.
Give it 10 more seconds.
You.
At this time, I'll close public comment. And I will make a motion to go into non-public for personnel, legal, and reputation.
Second.
Seconded by Select Person Bailey. Roll call vote.
Air I.
Answer, aye.
Really, aye.
Nap aye.
Thank you all for
Thank you
attending.
everyone for attending and have a good evening.
Wait, we have to move out of,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to,
I move out of non-public.
I'll
back to
second.
Public session.
second your motion.
Aye.
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 Aye. Good evening, everyone. We're back from our non-public session. I would like to make a motion to seal the minutes of non-public indefinitely, to protect the reputation of what was discussed.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Air aye.
Mancheck, aye.
Bailey, aye.
Nap aye. And I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Air aye.
Mancheck, aye.
No.
Nap aye. Everyone have a wonderful evening.
Everybody do the same.